This video is sponsored by no one. Welcome to the Warhammer 40k lesson series, and today's video will be going over the Tau Breacherfish combo. Are you having trouble with Toughness 5 meatheads clogging up your objectives in your Warhammer games? Well, today's combo for the Breacherfish will then call for a Breacher Squad worth 100 points, a Cadre Fireblade for 50, and the Delphish Transport for 85, bringing our total to 235 points. Now, we are playing the Tau Empire, which will then imply the Stealth Team support unit to help us out over here for an additional 110 points, bringing the grand total to 345 to complete the combo. Now, this is indeed a very large sum of points that we are spending in our very tightly budgeted armies. So why don't we take a look closer to see what exactly is being offered with all of these points spent. And so now, going into what I like to call the meat and the potatoes of this combo, we can go down the line to have a first look as to see what each unit really brings out. Starting first will be the Breacher Squad, costing 100 points, consisting of 10 models, each of which will have their main weapon, the Pulse Blaster, which already has the Assault keyword baked into it. Now, taken straight directly from the data cards, the Pulse Blasters have a stat line of a range of 10 inches, 2 attacks each, a ballistic skill of 3 up, which actually is quite unique to the entire Tau Codex as the starting ballistic skills, a strength of 6, AP -1, and 1 damage each. A very nice and strong close quarters weapon to get really close and knock some units off of the table. Then to make this unit slightly more dangerous will be their Breach and Clear ability, which in the sense that if your squad is shooting into an enemy unit that is within range of an objective, you simply are allowed to reroll the wound rule. Pretty nice. Now let's go over to the potatoes, the supporting cast to really bring out the best in this unit. Starting first will be the Cadre Fireblade, which will be our leader of choice for this squad, costing us 50 points, and as expected, his main ability, Volley Fire, can really ramp up the damage, in which he'll be able to give us an extra die per attack that we use with this unit. Of course, with the fully healthy Breacher Squad, we'll be expecting 10 extra dice with our Pulse Blasters. In essence, by adding 50% more to the cost, we will gain 50% more dice when firing. Next up, we'll get the actual Devilfish, our dedicated transport of choice, which is quite nice as this whole vehicle gets to both fly and move 12 inches. But not only that, its ability, the rapid deployment, allows us to not only advance, but then immediately disembark with that unit inside, which can act normally. Now, unfortunately, we will not be able to charge into our enemy, like in the case of a Land Raider will be able to do. But in either case, looks like this whole combo allows us to do what Tau does best in handling enemies. You see the enemy, you'll run at them, and then you load absolutely everything into it, and problem solved. So let's go into our next example to see what exactly goes down the line if you really were looking to deploy the entire might of this Breacherfish combo onto an unsuspecting enemy. And so here we are with what I like to call a war diagram to really visually see what it might look like if you were to go through the steps to unload this combo onto an unsuspecting target. First and foremost, with our Devilfish Transport, you can kind of see here that we get to zoom across the board so long as we roll something around like a 3 up on our advance, giving us about a 15-inch movement with this transport. And of course, with our rapid deployment ability, we can simply dump out all of our Devilfish units of the Breachers straight within the 10-inch range, which should be quite easy on the battlefield. Now let's go ahead and take a look. Of course, standard, we only get 10 Breachers, giving us about 20 attack dice if we get everybody in range to our target. Then, of course, the Cadre Fireblade will then enter the chat, and with the fully healthy squad, he will then add 10 more dice into the total, giving us 30 dice flinging on 3s. Now, of course, with the stealth battlesuits, as we mentioned earlier, they will come in and make sure during the shooting phase with the For the Greater Good ability that they will go ahead and spot up the enemy target so that we can then increase the ballistic skill of 1 as well. Going with that, we will then hit on 2s, and we also get to reroll 1s of hit rolls with the Forward Observer's ability on these stealth battlesuits. Now, for this kind of example, I decided to go with something like Sorry, Orcs players, the ugly green skins, because they have a toughness of 5 and a save on a 5 up. Not too shabby, but of course works very well for our strength 6 pulse blasters, then which allows us to wound on a 3 up, and of course in this scenario with these boys standing on top of an objective, I will be able to reroll the wound roll as well with their ability. Then going down, we finally end up with all the wounds that we managed to inflict. We'll get AP -1, and of course, it wouldn't be a Tau level of shooting if we didn't sprinkle in our garnish of ignores cover on our guns because of the fact that these stealth battlesuits have marker light baked into them already. Man, this is quite impressive, wouldn't you say? And I'm getting quite fired up because this is not even the end of what we're able to do. We haven't even got to talk about detachments yet. And if you want to look over, we'll talk about in just a minute, the 3 main ways we can spice up this combo a bit more. You can go first with either the Mont'ka detachment, which will give us assault and lethal hits. Although assault is kind of redundant. But in either case though, we can actually add on some more damage guaranteed with the lethal hits going onto those weapons. Or if you're looking to stay behind, you can switch over to Kayun, going from the 3, 4, 5 battle rounds to be able to get sustained hits on your guns. Or, better yet, for those who love to gamble, for a nice 1 command point, we can actually put both lethal and sustained hits on all of those 30 dice, and we get to see which guns explode first before we take down the enemy. Oh man, all these possibilities make me really fired up. Maybe we should go straight over to the tabletop and see what that looks like with real dice. Welcome to the sponsor section of our video. As stated, this one is sponsored by no one. So in the meantime, we'll be reading through The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, as we can enjoy some great literature together instead. The story begins right here. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up, and pop, out of the egg came a tiny and very hungry caterpillar. He started to look for some food. On Monday, he ate through 1 apple, but he was still hungry. On Tuesday, he ate through 2 pears, but he was still hungry. On Wednesday, he ate through 3 plums, but he was still hungry. On Thursday, he ate through 4 strawberries, but he was still hungry. On Friday, he ate through 5 oranges, but he was still hungry. On Saturday, he ate through 1 piece of chocolate cake, 1 ice cream cone, 1 pickle, 1 slice of Swiss cheese, 1 slice of salami, 1 lollipop, 1 piece of cherry pie, 1 sausage, 1 cupcake, and 1 slice of watermelon. That night, he had a stomach ache. The next day was Sunday again. The caterpillar ate through 1 nice green leaf, and after that, he felt much better. Now he wasn't hungry anymore, and he wasn't a little caterpillar anymore. He was a big, fat caterpillar. He built a small house called a cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks, then he nibbled a hole in the cocoon, pushed his way out, and became a beautiful butterfly. And so that will conclude our story time today in lieu of our normal sponsor. But if you enjoyed this section, we'll be doing much more between other videos, and of course, it will have absolutely nothing to do with the video that we are talking about in hand, in which we shall return to right now. And welcome back to the video. Now, unfortunately, it does look like our dice roller is a little bit broken, so if we wait for that one to be fixed, we can go over here and now talk about the theory behind army list building in Warhammer. As stated for a minute ago, is that we do have detachments to really augment our abilities for this combo to really maximize our damage. Now, there are about 3 detachments that really can help us with their abilities and stratagems for us to try and see which is one that's best for us and our play styles. So starting first, which is my personal favorite, will be the Mont'ka detachment, is known as the Killing Blow, which for ourselves will mean that for the battle rounds 1, 2, and 3, we will get assault on all of our guns. Now again, that's a little bit redundant given the fact that the breachers already have assault on their guns, although there's a little asterisk which a lot of the other guns do not have. In either case though, we can go over to see that we get lethal hits on our ranged weapons, so long as that unit is guided during the shooting phase. Guided. Yeah, I think now is a good time to talk about some different observers right about here. And as you can see, here are a few of our options listed out of the observers that we can take when using For the Greater Good as an army rule, and these are choices for support units to help us spot up the targets that we are looking to take down. First and foremost, we will get the Stealth Battlesuit Squad, which comes in at 110 points for 5 models, and which is quite nice because they already have Marker Light baked into the unit, meaning that they will already have the ability to put Ignore's cover onto the guns of the guided unit shooting their target. Then of course the main ability and the reason why many people take stealth battlesuits is going to be for the forward observers, in that the guided unit that is being buffed will then be able to reroll ones to hit and to wound when shooting the spotted target. Afterwards, we will then go over to our second option, which will be a squad of Pathfinders, coming in a little bit cheaper at 90 points, in that, of course, they still have Marker Light baked into that unit as well, but not only that, their target uploaded ability means in a very unique way that they themselves will be guided when they shoot into the target that they spot as well. Again, keep in mind that this does not work for the stealth battlesuits, but the Pathfinders themselves, they get to improve their ballistic skill by 1 when they shoot the target that they spotted up. For most cases, they'll be quite nice as a kind of a quote-unquote cleanup unit in which they can shoot into that same injured unit to finish it off once all of your big guns or main guns fire into that enemy unit. Now lastly, we have the Ethereal and Strike Team. Now this is one that's not really taken quite often, but in our scenario is kind of one that we might want to take because of the fact that even though it does cost 125 points, is that this allows us to have our ability to take enhancements to really move things along for certain units and combinations. So we'll get to more of this in detail later on, but for now, these are the 3 main options for observers when we go forward with our talking of detachments and stratagems. And so let's go back to our first one of Mont'ka. Okay, so here we are backtracking to where we started with Mont'ka as our detachment, and now we can go over the different stratagems that this detachment allows for us to have. Of course, as a quick refresher, for the first 3 battle rounds of the game, that's where this detachment is active, and then we will be able to get assault on all of our guns and lethal hits if our unit is being guided. Then of course we have our stratagems. The one that is used the most will be the Focused Fire stratagem for a nice 1 command point, which if we use this during the shooting phase before any units do start firing, we get to select 2 of our units and 1 of the enemies, and whenever either of those 2 units fire upon that targeted enemy unit, we will then increase the AP by 1. Which is quite nice for our breachers with our discussion, given that they now get to go up to AP -2 on all of the shots. Pretty nice. Now next up we get Pinpoint Counteroffensive. Now this one isn't really used kind of as the game progresses, but more of kind of on the spot, as with this one will only trigger so long as 1 of your units on the battlefield dies. Now keep in mind that Kroot does not count to this, although Vespid Stingwings do though. But in either case though, whenever 1 of your unit dies and you use this Pinpoint Counteroffensive stratagem, for the rest of the game, whichever enemy unit killed your unit, it will then get reroll hit rolls against it for the rest of the game. Now, keep in mind that you can actually use this attachment as many times as you wish throughout the game, which is quite nice, but again, it can't be really counted upon to always be on the ones that you're looking to take down immediately. In either case though, the last one we have is Combat Debarkation, which will then allow our target, especially if the target itself is not on an objective, we then get to reroll the wound roll to our shots going into that enemy unit, so long as our squad of breachers in this case has disembarked from a transport that turn. And so with that, this one will give us a little bit more flexibility in actually taking down large enemies outside of objectives, and keeping this in the back pocket is always good to know that you can secure more damage on the outside. Now, I think that will just about conclude for our topic for Mont'ka, and we can move... Oh, yeah, I suppose we need to talk about that. So there is one enhancement within the Mont'ka detachment known as Coordinated Exploitation for 40 points. Now this can directly influence the amount of damage we can deal with our Breacher squad. The main problem though is that given that this is an enhancement, and it does require that the enhancement wielder needs to be an observer, we are kind of at a loss for our abilities for which observers to actually put that one onto. For example, none of these stealth battlesuits are able to take this enhancement because there are no leaders that are able to be assigned to those guys. Secondly, the Pathfinder squad cannot take this enhancement either because their one leader, which will be Sub-Commander Darkstrider, is already an epic hero and he is simply unable to take any enhancements either. So as we stated earlier with our third option for observers, that makes an ethereal with a squad of a strike team kind of chilling at home gonna be the main choice for this type of enhancement. So the main problem though is, of course, that will lead us to a total with the ethereal, strike team, and the enhancement to 165 points for a unit that's just going to chill at home. For some people, that is quite nice, obviously because of the enhancement itself does allow for sustained hits to be added to all of our weapons if they become the spotting unit. Now, because of that, if we're really looking to see if we get the Rolls Royce of the total number of keywords and abilities that we can slap onto the Breacher squad with the Mont'ka detachment, going down the line, of course, is that our weapons already have assault baked into them. Then we will go get lethal hits for the Mont'ka detachment within the first 3 battle rounds. Then with the enhancement, with the ethereal, giving us sustained hits. Then of course, our ability to reroll wound rolls if we're shooting someone on objective. We will then increase the AP for our 5th extra bonus here with the focused fire, and maybe even do something like pinpoint counteroffensive to then reroll the hit rolls for the 6th one. And that's pretty good. But in either case though, there is a lot that we can work with in terms of the Mont'ka detachment, as you can really move across the board and unload all of your shots with the Breachers, with everything else including your Devilfish and the Cadre Fireblade all gaining assault on their weapons as well. Now we can actually flip to the other side of the Tau combat coin over to Kayun. And here we are at the other side of the Tau combat detachments, in that we will then instead get our bonus from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle rounds, so usually the last 3 of most games, in which we will gain sustained hits 1 on all of our guns, and then we get to ignore the ballistic skill and the hit roll modifiers if our unit is guided. This is quite nice already to begin with, and now let's talk about the stratagems to really increase everything to the next level for our Breachers. We first then be going over to the Tempting Trap, which for 1 command point, we will then, for the first time that we use it, declare 1 objective on the board that cannot be your opponent's home objective as the trapped objective. Meaning that whenever this stratagem is active, the unit that shoots into that targeted trap objective will then gain +1 to the wound roll to the enemies on that objective. Pretty nice, as this does also stack with the Breacher's ability to reroll the wound roll on their pulse blasters. Secondly though, we then actually get to go over the point blank ambush, which very similar to the coordinated strike on the Mont'ka side of things, is that we then, if we're within 9 inches of our target, all the guns for that unit will then get the improvement of 1 AP on their guns. Again, another means of making our pulse blasters AP -2, which makes it far more deadly than it already is. Now, of course, we have all of these, but the thing we do need to know is that these stratagems, especially these ones in particular, cannot be used on the 1st or 2nd battle round. Very similar to the detachment itself, it can only be used in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle rounds to then buff up your units along with the detachment itself. So, although your playstyle will be shifting to being a bit more cagey, as people would say, or kind of behind some pieces of cover until it's finally time to rush out there and then unload onto your enemies, we can get the total of a very nice amount of buffs and resources for our... Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about that enhancement. So yes, just like Mont'ka, there is going to be another enhancement in the sense of through Unity Devastation for the exact 40 points to then, in our case of our Observer unit, being the Ethereal and Strike Team combination, instead of Sustained Hits 1, them being the Observers will grant their guided unit lethal hits instead. So again, another way for us to get the Lethal Sussy combination. Yeah, that really needs to be a sticker. But in either case though, we still have a way of getting lethal hits and sustained hits on the weapons of our breachers if we so desire to spend 165 points for an observing unit. But let's go down the line here to really compare and count up how many keywords and buffs we can gain on our breacher squad. Of course, breachers already have assault on their guns baked in, then they'll be able to re-roll the wound roll so long as they're shooting a target on the objective. Then of course they'll gain sustained hits for our third one, ignore blitzing skill and hit rules by having a guiding unit within the third, fourth, or fifth battle round. Then tempting trap can gain 1 to their wound roll, point blank ambush will be able to get -1 to the AP improvement, and then through unity devastation will then give us our lethal hits on top of our sustained hits. Wow. 7 total buffs to this unit. I say that's pretty good. And so I did mention though, is that we do have one last detachment to go over that directly affects the breacher squad, and I like to call it the gambling detachment, which in actuality is going to be the experimental prototype cadre. Now this detachment is quite nice in the sense that we have one rule, which lasts for the whole game. Pretty straightforward, is that we get a +6 inch range to all of our guns the entire time. 6 inches might not seem like very much in terms of weapons and all that stuff, but remember, our breacher pulse blasters only get 10 inches on their guns, which for us is like a 60% increase to our range. Now, as a Tau player, I'll call that stonks. But in either case though, with this pretty straightforward rule allowing us to shoot off our opponents at a slightly marginally better range, we still get 2 stratagems that we get to use for these breachers directly. First and foremost, we'll then get experimental augmentation, which for 1 command point, we get to increase our strength to our weapon for our pulse blasters going from 6 strength to 7.
6.
Okay, let's skip that. All right, but still, that's one option. Our second option is then to add 1 strength, but also increase the AP by 1, making it a strength 7, AP -2 weapon, and hazardous as well, but well, don't worry about that. But the idea here is that you're actually able to get your pulse blasters, which are quite good at strength 6, AP -1, to then basically become the uncharged variant of all of the Space Marine plasma weapons, and still make it hazardous. But like I say, you know, what good is without the gambling of you just don't roll the ones. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard, right? Just fling the die and... Okay, either way though, let's take a look at the second stratagem, the Threat Assessment Analyzer. Now this one seems to call back to our previous attachments in that we can choose to give our weapons sustained hits 1 or lethal hits. Choosing one or the other, pretty nice, but then, as we say, we can gamble our way to victory by then choosing both lethal and sussies at the same time, and just a nice measly hazardous over there. Just don't roll the ones, you know what I'm saying? But sadly though, I think the main issue with this is that we cannot use both stratagems for the same unit. I know, it's really tragic that Games Workshop simply do not want Tau players to have fun. But in either case though, you can kind of go about your way. Either you have 2 separate breacher teams, or you select one to be the uncharged plasma boys and the other ones to have the lethal sussies, and just don't roll ones and you'll be fine. But lastly though, I do need to mention is that there are no enhancements for this detachment that directly benefit the breacher fish combo that we're talking about, mainly because this detachment is more focused towards the Tau battlesuits and their commanders, so all 4 enhancements are quite literally only for Tau commanders in battlesuits, and none of which can apply to the breacher fish combo. But in either case though, looks like we have all the groundwork related to the theory we need for us to enjoy some games playing with this combo. And so, as I would say, as I am also a former student as well as a teacher, what good is all this lecturing if we don't have an example to follow from? So let's head right on over to the actual computer once more, as it looks like the dice roller is fixed, and so we can go back to the tabletop and really get to see how I myself will be using this combo on the tabletop. So here we are back on the tabletop simulator. Now thankfully the judge came back and told me that the dice roller has been fixed, and so as I'd like to say, what good is a lesson without its example? So here we go. We have our setup here again, when this time we have the breachers unloaded from the devilfish. Everyone will be within 10 inches of the range of the guns that we use. And we already have the stealth suits selected as observers, spotting into this full squad of 20 boys being led by a weird boy and a war boss. And so with this, I personally do take the Mont'ka detachment as the one of choice, as being able to get not only assault on our guns, but lethal hits as well, but really add things to the amount of wounds that we are expected to unload on a quick manner onto our opponents. Now for me, I think one last thing I like to do as I declare the breachers to fire upon the boys is that we will be using the focused fire stratagem for one command point, allowing us to gain one increased AP for all of our guns here. So as we have been talking about and going through, with all 10 of the pulse blasters in range, we normally will get 20 shots, but of course with the Kaja Fireblade being a leader to this unit, we will get 10 more dice as well, one for each more gun that is within range to shoot the boys. Now, we normally shoot on 3 ups within our normal ballistic skill, but thanks to the spotting that the stealth battlesuits have, we can now hit on 2s, and with their forward observer's ability, we can re-roll the 1s. So let's go ahead and have a look here. We will get this spread of dice. Again, we can re-roll the 1s to hit for the stealth battlesuits, and so we end up with 29 hits with separation of the lethal hits as well. Now thankfully, with a strength of 6 shooting into toughness 5 boys, we will be able to wound on 3s, and would you look at that, these boys are nice and neatly placed on top of the objective, allowing the breachers to re-roll the wound roll on their attacks as well. So roll this, all the 1s and 2s can instantly be re-rolled, and we get a total of 23 and 5 more wounds from lethal hits going straight into the boys. Now again, we increased our AP by 1 more thanks to the focused fire stratagem, and so with that, we'll be getting AP minus 2 shots into boys, which normally might be able to get cover depending on the angle in which we can assign the wounds, but thankfully with the stealth battlesuits taking the observer here with their marker light, cover is simply removed, and these are straight up AP minus 2 shots into saving of 5 ups for the boys, leading, oh dear, looks like they don't get a save. And that turns into 28 total wounds of no saves for the boys, instantly knocking out the whole squad of 21 wounds, thanks to the boss stub having 2, and then that will leave 5 more wounds to be desired, usually here killing the weird boy for 4 wounds, and the war boss will be able to make an invulnerable save on a 5 up, and for the sake of the example, let's see what he can do. He does not save it, therefore he takes another damage as well. And that is simply just from the pulse blasters themselves. We have a couple of other weapons to follow up with, but nonetheless, this was the main combo as to saying how much firepower the one simple gun has amongst this squad of breachers. Now, does this also add to the fact that people absolutely dislike Tau for being totally broken in the shooting phase? Well, I suppose this kind of speaks for itself. But in either case, though, that would actually conclude what we had in mind for today in discussing the total combo for the breachers and the devilfish for the Tau Empire. Now, if you did enjoy this and have any other questions, you can definitely let us know in the comments, and we'll be usually back with some more combos as well. We'll be going over different factions and different ways to fully maximize the combinations for the best synergy across the board here. Now, we do stream as well live games on Tabletop Simulator as well on the YouTube channel and Twitch, so hopefully we can see you all there. And as always, thank you for watching.